Hello and welcome to the Real Biz Life Chronicles, where we discuss all things business, branding, and life. I'm your host, Tracy Fryer. Now, today I have a very special lady joining us, Julia Yeow from the Destiny Rescue organization. Destiny Rescue is dedicated to rescuing children from sexual exploitation and human trafficking and helping them stay free. I wanted to highlight that today. The reason for this episode, I went to a Destiny Rescue event and I was so moved by the passion that this organization has for what they're doing. And full disclosure, you might find some of the conversation quite triggering, quite confronting. And I urge you not to hit skip on that button and act like it doesn't exist in our world, because it really, really does. So I felt called to have Julia on the show today to, number one, educate you guys on what exactly is happening in our world, and how we can actually help be a part of this change. And number two, as well, to showcase the wonderful work that this organization is doing. So without further ado, Julia, welcome.
Thank you, Tracy. It's such a privilege and honor to be here today. And really want to thank you for creating a space for me and, more importantly, for the work of Destiny Rescue with your listeners.
It's an absolute pleasure, Julia. And the privilege is actually mine, to be honest with you. Like I said, I was so moved by your guys' events, and I'm hoping I can stay composed during this episode today, because I do feel very called to showcase what you guys are doing. So I thought we could kick off with a bit of an intro about yourself and how is that you find yourself working with Destiny Rescue?
Sounds amazing. Thanks, Tracy. So I was born and raised in Asia, where more than 60% of child sex trafficking victims actually originate from. So, growing up, while I was very fortunate, my family were middle class, I was exposed from a very young age to the social imbalance that can be really in your face in many developing countries. The poverty, the unequal distribution of wealth and privileges. These weren't just reports that I would read about in the papers or images that, you see once or twice a year through awareness days. This is, and this was, and remains a way of life for the majority of people. And I remember maybe when I was 6 or 7, watching a homeless family going on about their business on the streets of Kuala Lumpur, where I was raised. Children younger than me at that time running around with joyful abandon, and me just sitting there thinking to myself, I wonder what I've ever done to be born where I am and what they did to be born where they. And I know it's quite hip, 6-year-old, but I think that was. Yeah, and that was the start of a desire to truly understand and be part of bringing some sort of balance to a very unequal world that we live in. That's the driving force behind my 20-year career as a news editor and journalist in Asia. And then recently in the corporate world, where I was managing ESG partnerships. Now, today, I'm a corporate and community partnerships manager at Destiny Rescue. It's a role that really speaks to my desire for social equity and justice. It's also, I guess, a culmination of all the very different skills and insights that 25 years of work has given me. So, that's just a little bit about me.
And I love how you felt so called at such a young age, because, I'm from South Africa as well. And, you're fully immersed in that sort of imbalance. And, like you said, what's the difference, or what was the, I guess, I want to say rite of passage, I'm not sure that's the right word, but for one person to be born into, a privileged upbringing and one person to be born on the completely opposite side of that. So it's great that you've had that calling for so long.
Yeah, I think honestly, Tracy, everybody has it in us. And it's a matter of time where you hear something, you see something, and you do feel that little tug in your heart that says, well, to do something about this, and one day the person is going to be you in whatever form or manner that you can. So it's just amazing.
Yeah, and I think something so important as well, Julia, is that we don't realize how lucky we are to actually have the freedom of choice to choose how we're going to spend our day and to choose, what it is that we want to do or who we want to be. So I'm really, whilst the topic is confronting, I'm really looking forward to having our chat.
Likewise.
I thought what we can do, Julia, is if you please tell us about Destiny Rescue.
Sure. Thanks, Tracy. And I know you did a little bit of an introduction at the start. Thank you for that. But
Welcome.
as you said, we are a charity. We're a not-for-profit organization with quite a clear mission. Now, we seek to find, to rescue, and to free children from trafficking and sexual exploitation. But we don't just stop there. We then offer our child survivors educational and economic solutions that will hopefully keep them free. And that's really important, Tracy, as we've both shared, just that whole cycle that leads to exploitation. We seek to address that after we free these children from basically the evils that they've been trapped in. Now, Destiny Rescue in 12 countries across the world, in Asia, in Africa, and in South America. And in each of these countries, we work and partner with local law enforcement and other not-for-profit organizations in our rescue and rehabilitation work. Destiny Rescue also has 3 funding nations. That's the US, New Zealand, and Australia, where we were born. Now it's amazing. I'll tell you a little bit about our founding story, which I love. But before I go into that, just a bit more about the work that we do and how we operate. Now, in some of the countries that we operate in, our agents actually work with local law enforcement to go undercover to find these children. And then when we have sufficient evidence, we raid establishments to rescue them. And very importantly, to arrest their abusers. Depending on these children's circumstances, they are then given immediate medical and emotional support. A lot of them, as we can imagine, have lived a life of trauma for countless years. And we are able to be in a position now where we can provide them that support. But after that, these children are then offered education and economic opportunities that, as I've said, will hopefully keep them free and their families free from exploitation. Now, apart from the rescue work that we do in Nepal, Destiny Rescue actually mans border stations that prevent children from being trafficked across one of the world's busiest land borders. In Africa, yes, just the diversity of how we work. It really shows the diversity of this terrible industry. That there are so innocent ways in which children can be trafficked and exploited, and we're very aware of that. So that really reflects in the work that we do. Now, in Africa, we enter communities where children and sometimes entire families are forced into situations of sexual exploitation out of to just survive, to put food on the table, to pay for stationery to go to schools. And
goodness.
It's horrific, but we go into these communities and we offer these children and their families a way out, again, through education and economic empowerment. So I think that just kind of sums up, really briefly, the body of work that we do. And Tracy, I want to go back, I think, to our founding story, which just about what we spoke about, just having that little spark in each of us to do something and to right a wrong. I love telling the story of how Destiny Rescue's work really began. And it really did actually begin with one man, Tony Kerwan. He's our founder. He went to work for a work trip to Thailand many years ago. And he saw and he overheard a conversation between 2 fellow travelers from Australia who were discussing the sale of a child. Now, Tony, he went home after the trip. He went Sunshine Coast, but he just couldn't forget that conversation, right? He couldn't get it out as much as he could. He has 2 beautiful children at that time, young girls. And he just thought one day, somebody's got to do something about this. Right? Well, he decided that he was somebody. And so he said he's going to do something about this. And what began as Tony and a group of friends and like-minded thought just coming together, to network with organizations in Thailand, to rescue children, to fund the work that they were doing, and then to offer these children a way where they could stay free, has today grown to be Destiny Rescue, an international organization that has rescued more than 16,000 people from sexual
amazing
around the world. And really draws home that each one of us really has that capacity to change, to bring change. And I love that story.
Thanks for sharing, Julia. It's like every fiber in my being is like goosebumping as we chat here. And I think it just goes to show you never know when there's going to be that one moment that can not only, like, I guess, change your life, but you can absolutely impact all of those around you as well.
Absolutely. And Tracy, you're right. And the beauty of that story is even though it started with Tony,
Mm,
we able and have been able to do what we've done, 16,000 children and counting, because of the support of many. Now, Tony is
mm,
one person may have started this, but we're able to have this great impact because of the support of so many people over the years.
mm.
That's the beauty of change when it's collective power, isn't it? So,
Yes.
mm,
And Julia, perhaps you please educate us a bit on the child sex trafficking industry.
yeah, sure, Tracy. I think it's horrific, and that's really the only
Mm,
word apart from evil that comes to mind every time I speak to survivors, I speak to our rescue agents, I look at the numbers. Horrific and evil, but so
mm.
important we're aware of this.
Yes.
But I do want to say at this point that there could potentially be things that we're sharing and we're talking about today that will be
Yeah.
triggering. And as you said, I really want to acknowledge the courage of everyone listening who are not clicking on sort of skip. And
You and
your
me both.
and your courage for having me, Tracy, on this show.
Oh, it's only a pleasure. As I say, it's great what you guys are doing. And like I said before, it's easy to just, hit skip or to turn a blind eye and pretend that this doesn't exist and live in a little bubble in Perth where we're blessed with the ocean and the freedom to choose. So thank you. It's the privilege is mine.
Thank you. Um, every 30 seconds, Tracy, one child is being trafficked and sexually exploited somewhere in this world. That's what the numbers are telling us. Um, that's more than 60 children in the time that we have today if we have a 30-minute episode.
Hmm.
So
Astounding.
it is. And experts say that the child sex trafficking industry is the fastest growing criminal industry in the world. It accounts for more than $99 billion a year.
Oh,
That's
goodness.
$99 billion that's being made of literally the bodies of children, right?
Mm.
As I said at the start of this episode, more than 60% of these children who are trafficked and then sold into commercial sex slavery, they come from the Asia Pacific region. That's just on the
Mm.
doorstep of Australia. And more than
Yeah.
90% of these children are girls. Um,
Mm.
these are numbers that if you were to, anybody can Google it and go into the depths of it, but it's astounding. And it really is the
It
tip of
is.
the iceberg, because of the nature of the criminal industry. Um, this is really just the tip of the iceberg of it. A lot of experts believe the
Mm.
numbers are larger, but suffice to say, it is enough that it is a problem that cannot be addressed by just one, party, by one particular government, by one country, by private sector or government sector. This is going to take all of us in our different capacities.
Mm.
This.
And Gina, do you feel or do you think there's a reason that it's one of the biggest industries? I must be honest, my insides are turning as we speak because again, it's just so astounding, the numbers and the figures, and yeah, your mind just boggles.
It is. And this, Tracy, might be really difficult to hear. I mean, it's always difficult for me to
Mm.
say. This is a fact of the matter that child sex trafficking today is fast on its way to overtaking the arms and the drugs trafficking industry. And experts tell us that this is because, unlike the sale of weapons and drugs, a
Mm.
child can be sold over and over and over again for as many years as you like, essentially. And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why it's growing in the way that it is.
And do you think social media has a part to play, or is it the pornography industry, or is it just people sort of wanting that next high every time, or it's just
Oh,
I just can't get
absolutely.
my head around it. Mm.
Absolutely. I think the explosion, especially of child sex abuse and exploitation online,
Mm.
that really exploded during COVID. When people were locked up in our homes, borders were
Yes.
shut, and the addiction needed to be fed, that's when the internet and the dark web just became a monster all on its own. And we're
Yeah.
seeing, every government across the world is seeing such a large increase in the number of child sexual abuse materials, CSAM, as we call it, that it's mind-boggling. And it's almost as if technology to counter this is struggling to keep up with the number of children who are being sexually exploited online. So, absolutely, Tracy, the link between pornography exposure at a very young age, the ease of abusing a child anywhere in this world from the comforts of your home and behind your computer, the ease of doing that. You can pay for child sexual exploitation services from using all manners of payment methods, which is mind-boggling and
Yeah,
seemingly
that is.
that it's just it's a massive problem. But I like to take hope from the fact that organizations like Destiny Rescue and many others that are out there are aware of, and we are constantly seeking to stop this. But we need the support. Like I said, it's not something that one organization or one government can do. Destiny Rescue has a online sexual exploitation, anti-online sexual exploitation unit in Thailand, where we work in collaboration with the Thai police, because Thailand and Philippines are global hubs for child sexual exploitation online. Thai police have welcomed us to set up a training center and a hub
That's
in
great.
Thailand to capture sexual abuse material and videos of children, and we're able to actually find and trace these children and their source, and also find the abusers and perpetrators from everywhere in the world. So we are aware of this. We're on top of this, but it's a huge that we just need everyone's support to fight it.
And is Africa the same as well?
So in Africa, our rescues and the way we work is, as I've said earlier, it's a survival rescue, where in Africa, we rescue our children from communities where sexual exploitation is often the only means of their families surviving. So in Africa, the problem of online sexual abuse of children and trafficking is extremely rampant, and is definitely a problem as well. But the way that Destiny Rescue operates in Africa, because we have collaboration with local organizations and law enforcement, is we are addressing the sexual exploitation because of the need to survive, and so we're providing that solution to keep these families out of that circle of abuse, that cycle of abuse.
Julia, there was a story that I don't know, at the last event that I went to, that someone shared, and I don't want to get the story wrong, so feel free to stop me. It was about a girl who was supporting her siblings. The parents had passed away, and she was selling herself for like 25 cents so she could put food on the table. Was that correct?
Yes, I think that would have been a story of a survivor from Africa, actually.
Yes, that's it. Yeah.
Yes. Actually, if you go onto our website, we actually have videos, multiple videos and documentaries of our survivors. And obviously we have all of their consent and permission to share their stories. In fact, it's beautiful because they all are very, very passionate about Destiny Rescue telling their story in full, because they want anybody else, any other child, to have to go through what they have. I believe the story that you're sharing, Tracy, is of Dahlia. And you can find her story online. She was 14 years old at the time that Destiny officers went to her village. Her mother and father had left when she was at a very young age, when she was very young, with her then baby sister. And at the time that we met Dahlia, she was 14, her sister was 5. She had been selling herself for years, really started off as a need to pay for medical bills for her baby sister. As I said, that is not in the picture anymore. And, she shared with us how the years that she was having to sell herself, she felt like she was forgotten by the world. And in her own words, was nothing. I felt like he had forgotten about me. we found her. She wasn't
Mm.
forgotten. I'm so proud to say that today Dahlia has graduated from our program. So we have a 2-year
Oh,
program that's
amazing.
Survivors in Africa, where
Yeah.
again we families in and we there's skills training that was involved for Dahlia. She is now running a small business with a
Oh,
friend who
fantastic.
program. And her goal is that one day she'll be able to put her younger sister through university and that
Mm.
they have to go back to that life that she was living in. So thanks, Tracy, for reminding me of Dahlia's story. It's one of many, many that we are privileged to be able to tell.
Mm.
Reminds us of the many thousands others who are out there who are really waiting for that opportunity to have
Yeah.
an
Jude, I have so many questions. I did want to touch on, the work that you guys do with the survivors afterwards, and just the opportunity that you do give them. And I also want to touch on, that psychological side of things that the organization would take them through. But again, that opportunity, like Dahlia, or I think there was another girl, she was trying to be a hairdresser. Do you mind to touch on that as well, please?
Sure. So, Tracy, with every one of our survivors, every case and every situation is so unique, right? So, depending even on the countries in which they're rescued from, and the partnership agreements and the MOUs that we have with the local law enforcement, we then craft up a very individualized freedom plan. We call it a freedom plan, based on
Love
the child
that.
needs. Yeah. So I explained a little bit briefly about in Africa, our freedom plan looks fairly different from what we would have for offer for survivors in Thailand and say the Philippines, and even in Nepal. But in general, every child that is rescued will then will conduct a very thorough medical assessment and check on the child.
Mm.
Actually, a lot of our survivors, our victims, come to us after rescue with medical needs that
Mm.
we immediately address. So funding for
Of
rescue
course.
goes into meeting those very urgent medical requirements, and as you said, trauma care, counseling, right,
Mm.
is makes up the start of their recovery journey. Now, it's after these sort of immediate needs are addressed that we then offer that child and sometimes their entire families options. Now, for most cases where the child is younger and the educational opportunities are something that we always offer first because we truly believe that that is one of the most important ways that they can come out of that cycle of poverty and
Mm.
exploitation and from victims of exploitation. Now, in some cases where the child maybe is slightly older, say in their 15, 16, or even 17 years old, that's when the offer for skills training, depending
Mm.
again that particular child and the region in which they're rescued from. It could be anything from cooking to hairdressing to sewing. So in Africa, a lot of it
Mm.
is sewing skills and even hairdressing because there's a demand for that in those communities, and these children either in partnership with existing charities or under Destiny Rescue's own sort of skills training program,
Mm.
they are go through a series from 6 months to a year where we're training them how to run a business. So very much, I guess,
Right.
Tracy, like what you're doing here, you're
Yeah.
providing sort of business tips, to your listeners. We offer that in a slightly different manner. We're teaching
Oh,
them really
fantastic.
to be to set on a life where they can be free from exploitation if they're
Mm.
independent economically and have the education that will see them through their lives. So yeah, I hope. But every situation is so different, and
I
Tracy,
can imagine. Oh.
I like to add that for local rescues, the first point of call is we work with authorities to find the families where these children have been removed from. Now, in some cases,
Yes.
sadly, the families are actually aware and, in fact, had actually been, played a part in the sale of these children.
Yes, I remember Chelsea's story, yes. Oh my goodness.
And that's horrific. But in
Mm.
many cases, it's beautiful to know that actually these children are not, they belong with their family. So we actually do get a lot of
Mm.
questions from our partners to say, why would you send children back to their families where their families are poor and, they're impoverished? And we say, we believe that the best place for a child to heal from the trauma of being trafficked and sexually exploited is with their family where it's safe. And we always seek to bring the child to their family and then work with their families so that we can empower them to come out of that cycle of poverty and not to separate the child. Had so many stories where families have held out hope that their child would be returned because for some reason their children went to work in a restaurant in the city thinking that they'll get paid for the day and they were trafficked and trapped, and that family has not seen their child for years, but they've actually held hope that their child would be returned one day. And Tracy, the joy of being able to return that child to a family that loves them, we ultimately believe that's the best way for a child to recover where it's safe. So that's just to give you an idea of the very different paths that our survivors take post-rescue. All of them with the intention of ensuring that that child and their family will never have to be, sort of returned into that situation of evil.
Yeah, I watched The Sound of Freedom, and I couldn't believe how quickly and easily it happens. I mean, those children were going for like an audition, and the dad dropped them off. He said, "I'll pick you up at the end of the day," and he went back, and they were gonski. And it was just to our listeners, if you haven't watched that, I'd highly recommend that you watch that video. And it just happens so quickly and so easy, and they can vanish for good, or sometimes for years. So very, very scary.
Absolutely, Tracy. And for each of these children, the world's forgotten about them. That's what they would think. The world's forgotten about them. This is my life. And you'll see that actually, this is maybe a little bit of a deviation, Tracy, but you see that a lot of the mothers and fathers who we've found to be complicit in actually exploiting their children, they themselves were victims of sexual exploitation. They themselves were victims of trafficking. And so it's a daunting task, but if you look at it, when we rescue and you support us in rescuing one child, it's generations of children that we have a part to play in protecting. It's not just that one, but the lives that come after that and surround that child actually are rescued as well. And that's really quite beautiful.
It is. It kind of breaks that vicious cycle that's been happening because, again, some of them don't know any better. That's just what they've been born into. So they don't even understand that there is another world outside of that.
Absolutely, Tracy. And with the sound that case of how easy it is to just be taken, reminds me of a case in Cambodia a couple of years ago where, again, a young boy after school was told by a friend, and they said, "Oh, I've got this offer to do dishes at this restaurant in the city, and the amount that they'll pay us from this one day of 6 hours of washing dishes would be, the same amount as what your family would earn in a month." And this young boy at 12 at that time, he thought, how amazing if I can do that for my family. He went with his friend, who were immediately transported to another part of the city where they were sold. So their bodies were sold and they were abused. It wasn't for many years later that Destiny Rescue officers found him, rescued him, and returned him to his parents.
Wow.
At his age. And they told us that for the years that he just didn't come home one day, and they knew he hadn't run off, right? And so they were looking and searching for him, but just had no idea where to start. But they told our officers that he had a seat at their dining table. And for years, I think it was 4 years that he was lost, they kept that seat empty. And every meal that 4 years, they served his meals at his seat. They refused to accept that he would never come back. And they kept that.
Yeah, wow.
And every time I share that story,
Julia. Wow.
It breaks me as a mother, but it also shows
of course,
the impact that we can have, just
totally.
and in whatever little that we can give, and every one of us has that role, but it's just a beautiful story, isn't it, Tracy? It's heartbreaking.
It is. Yeah, it is heartbreaking, but also to just not give up on hope, because I think, so many of our circumstances, not as extreme as that by any means. There might be something little and we just give up because we think, but I mean, that's a true testament to having faith and just giving up, not giving up, should I say, and not giving up on hope.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks for sharing, Julia. I would love to know, I know you guys shared some stats of who are sort of the biggest, where is this industry, which countries are kind of, I want to say, partaking in this industry the most. I remember you guys shared some stats at the last event.
Yes, we did. I think this comes out of a question of how close to home is child exploitation and the online abuse of children. How close to us here in Australia? So I shared earlier that, even though 60% of child sex trafficking victims are in the Asia Pacific and South America regions. And even though rescue work takes place in these nations and outside our borders, the abuse and the enslavement of our survivors is not a them problem. It is very much closer to home than Australians like to admit or even know about. Now, according to Thai police, their records over a period of 10 years have shown that Australians actually make up the highest number of foreign nationals convicted in Thailand of sexual crimes against children. Now, that's a gold medal of shame, Tracy.
I agree. Yeah. Astounding.
It is offensive, for me to know countrymen are doing this to these children. Now, data from international law agencies have ranked Australians as the third highest number of foreigners involved in cases of online sexual abuse of children in the Philippines.
Yeah.
We are up close just behind the US and Sweden.
So it's America, Sweden, and Australia?
That's right.
Yeah.
So, one might think that these cases of abuse, we're talking about children in Africa, in South America, in Asia, and you might be tempted, someone might be tempted to think that's horrible, that's horrific, but that's not really happening here. So we're okay, But Jules, I want to point out that a study last year in Australia, which looked at attitudes of Australian men towards child sexual abuse, found that 1 in 10 Australian men had actually committed a sexual offense against a child. That's 1 out of 10, Tracy.
Wow.
That same study showed that nearly 1 in 6 Australian men report hidden sexual feelings towards children. They may not have acted on it yet, but they've actually acted.
1 in 6.
1 in 6, Tracy. And this is a study that you can find online. It blew people's minds when it was.
It's blowing my mind right now. Yeah.
So, every time we launch a raid, every time we rescue and we set free victims of these crimes, victims who may not at this stage be within our borders, our investigation to the arrest of abusers, which, if we look at the studies, could be that neighbor down the street. And 1 in 10, Tracy.
It's just scary. My goodness. Yeah.
It's so I tell our partners, that your funding, your support allows us to also remove the criminals, both from outside our country as well as those who abuse from the comforts of their own homes in Australia. You're helping us to actually remove them from doing further harm and hurting children, not just outside our borders, but our children. And that's a powerful role that we can play. I mean, even talking about this, Tracy, is setting off a wave of change. But these are dollars, these are medals, gold medals, silver medals that we should utterly be ashamed of. And it is our problem. It is no longer their problem.
No, definitely not. And Julia, how much time and money does it typically take to rescue a child?
Thanks for asking that, Tracy. And I shared earlier that, with each region that we work in, with each child that we work in, it's really quite unique and quite different. With some children, the cost of rescue and rehabilitation is much higher because we have that 2-year freedom plan that we walk them through. In some cases, when a child is rescued, we pay for the return of that child to their family, and it ends there. But in sort of a ballpark figure that we work with, it's $1,800 to rescue and to rehabilitate one child. Now, that's not a figure that is, by any means unachievable and unattainable. In fact, a lot of our rescue partners are surprised, and a lot of them endeavor to pledge to rescue one child, two child, five children in a year, because it is possible.
Yeah.
Going to say that it's not prohibitive, all right? And for a lot of businesses, they've chosen to sort of adopt and to pledge to rescue a certain number of children, just because, like I said, rescuing that one child actually brings about a much wider impact to that child's community and family.
Julia, one thing I loved in The Sound of Freedom, there was a business owner, and I can't remember his name now, but he actually, I think he's into real estate, and he actually helped the cops find these guys and capture them. So it was really great to see a business owner who was using not only his blessings, but also his wealth to really help with these crimes that are being committed. And they ended up catching the guys, which was great because I think he had an island or something. Anyway, go watch it if you haven't. What are some ways that, business owners or corporates in Australia, can get involved into ending these horrific crimes?
Oh, I love that question, Tracy. And again, with my background in corporate affairs, where, as corporate affairs manager, I was managing just that funding and partnerships with charities. This is something that's really close to my heart because corporate Australia, business leaders in Australia have a huge role to play in leadership, in change, right? In making social impact and change. Now, there's an African proverb that says, and correct me if I got this wrong, but if you want to go quickly, go alone. If you want to go far, go together, right? And I love that.
Yeah,
because giving on a personal level is powerful. We all know that, but it's collective power of many that can really bring about real change, right? And business leaders, as I've said, have such a huge social responsibility to take the lead in this. Now, a business gives to charity, and not just gives, but partners in work that brings about change, is playing a role in changing society, not just locally, but on a global scale. So imagine this, Tracy. If you're a business, let's say you're in the transportation industry or in the movie hospitality, you could fill that blank with, you could be in a design industry or finance, right? And let's say you decide to partner Destiny Rescue today. Now, not only would your business be making a direct impact of changing the fate of child victims, but above that, your business would be spreading awareness of the child trafficking industry. You're spreading that awareness within your circle of influence. Your staff will know about it, your customers, and other businesses within your industry and beyond. So basically, by supporting Destiny Rescue, your business is actually playing a leading role in building and growing an entire community that says this is enough. And if this is not right for our children, it's not right for any child, right? And that's powerful. Last year, I might actually be preaching to the choir, because last year, Australia ranked the 6th most generous country in the world when it comes to giving.
Wow.
Total philanthropic giving by Australian individual businesses, small businesses, large corporations, foundations, it totaled $13 billion. Now, it makes me really think that many of you are listening in are already doing this. You are already partnering causes that are beyond profit, right? I think it's what many people call the Australian way, because we celebrate blessings and where we are today by sharing and giving to those who are less so. It makes me I'm really passionate about that, because there's just so much good that one business can make beyond just giving, and I love that.
Yeah. And Julia, can you tell us about the campaign you guys are running at the moment?
Yes, we are. So, Destiny Rescue is running for the end of financial year season. We've launched an urgent appeal. It's to raise funds to rescue 1,220 children across all of the countries in which we work in. Now, what's really heartbreaking for me in my role, Tracy, is that there is always a wait list of rescues, right? Sitting on the desk of our rescue agents in each of our 12 countries is a file and a folder of children who are in need of rescue. And often cases are just waiting for funding to be approved, right? And that's
Yeah.
heartbreaking to me, but that's the reality of the work that we do, right? And so this end of financial year, we've launched this campaign where a group of our supporters, an amazing small group of our supporters, who are made up some of business owners themselves, have come together and officially pledged to match every dollar that is donated by the general public in the month of June up till $620,000. So that is the
Wow.
amount that they've pledged. They've committed to every dollar. Now, what that means to you, Tracy, to me, and to everybody listening in is that if you support us in this campaign, your donation and the impact of your giving will literally be doubled. And
Awesome.
and I love that, right? Because as you might know, all donations to Destiny Rescue is tax deductible.
Yes.
So I would sort of implore and invite everybody listening in to click on the link that I know Tracy's made available after this episode, or better yet, reach out to me to see how your business can actually become our rescue partners, to see how we can partner with you on a long-term basis, and don't let opportunity to play a part in changing the lives of many, many children.
So we'll definitely pop all the links in the show notes as well, Julie. And I think I love what you shared as well. And I wanted to highlight it. It's not just that child that you're helping, it's all those generations to come that we also have the impact, the opportunity to impact. And I mean, $1,800, it's in the larger scheme of things. I mean, it's maybe not going on your trip to Bali or something, but it's actually it's a possible amount.
Absolutely. And I want to add, Tracy, that $1,800 is a very, very possible. It's very, I think for a lot of us who are blessed where we are, it really is a little bit, like I said, it's maybe one short holiday. It's a couple of family meals outside, right? And that kind of impact that you can make by sacrificing that is just, it's almost as if, what's the reason not to? But I do want to add that for this, there are so many creative ways that businesses can partner us. So, of course, there is the pledge of the amount that you would like to give to Destiny Rescue. But we've had businesses that run team games, team building events, leveraging off the sort of competitiveness of their staff to raise funds in teams. We've had office Olympics, where teams are, an office is split up into little teams, and they're given tasks on a weekly basis and earn points by running these tasks. I've just come out over the weekend of a group of university students and youth who said, we may not have $1,800 to give, but we're going to fundraise. We're going to do whatever we can. We're going to wash cars. We're going to have a bake sale. We're going to do this big community event, and we're going to raise funds to rescue one child. Tracy, they ended up raising enough funds to rescue 4 children.
Oh my goodness.
And a group of youth. It's amazing. And that's the beauty of the work that I do. I think being able to see that passion, if I think of that in terms of a business or a corporation, if a group of youth with so little can have that impact, what is a business? So
we don't have any excuse. Yeah.
And I guess my call today is reach out. There are so many ways that you can make it work for your business. And that, we know that businesses that give and that do more than just what's leading to their bottom line or that what brings profit actually keeps and retains and attracts better employees. So it's a win-win, and it's just mind-blowing.
Yeah, and I also think, like with anything, whatever one, and I'm not just saying people should give to expect to receive, but the universe always provides tenfold, no matter what it is that you put out there. And something else I really want to highlight is that there's so many creative ways that you can actually do this, like with your uni students that you mentioned. You kind of just get bogged down in, oh, it's $1,800. How am I going to sort of make it happen? But there's so many fun ways that you can actually go about doing it that kind of creates more of a community in your workplace as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. A lot of businesses also do workplace giving arrangements with Destiny Rescue, and that's
Hmm.
to your employees the opportunity to, basically pledge a certain amount of their month, their salary to Destiny
Mm.
Rescue, tax deductible, and they're just like I said, there's so many creative and different ways in which you can partner in our work. The sky's the limit, really.
Fantastic. And Julia, where's the best place for our listeners to go should they wish to connect with you?
So I know, Tracy, you'll be sharing a
Mm.
link on how to contact me. My contact details will be made available as well. But if you'd like to know more about the work of Destiny Rescue beyond what we've talked about today, just go to our website. It's just destinyrescue.org. You watch all the videos that we spoke about. You'll see Dahlia's story. You read about Chelsea.
Mm.
You see behind the Greek Gate, and countless other survivors who now have a story that they can tell where they couldn't before.
Mm.
But I guess what's really important, especially if you're a business owner yourself, and you like to know ways in which you can support us, reach out to me personally. I would, across Australia, I would love to have that conversation with you.
Thank you, Julia. Like I said, we'll definitely pop everything in the show notes so our listeners can reach out. Julia, before we jump off, is there any final words you'd like to share with our listeners?
Oh, sorry, Tracy. I've just shared so. I keep talking.
If not, that's fine.
Again, I just need to thank everybody listening in today. If you felt that tug in your heart today, and if you find in yourself a little bit of a stirring to say, somebody's got to do something about this, like our founder Tony
Mm.
felt 24 years ago, I would just leave you with the sort of I would implore you to not ignore it. I would implore
Mm.
you to act on it, because the impact of your actions, sometimes you may not even see it, but it will make a huge impact, and sometimes for generations to come. So don't miss out on that opportunity to truly be a game changer.
Mm.
You never imagine. So I would maybe just leave your listeners with that. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Julia. Thank you for all you shared today, and just the utmost respect for everything you guys are doing and for yourself, being fully committed and involved in this higher calling. I think it's really fantastic. And thank you so much for being my guest as well.
Thank you, Tracy. It's been an utter privilege. Thank you so much.
Only a pleasure. Chat soon, Julia. Thank you.
Cheers.